Good afternoon. Barry emailed me yesterday and said there would be 475 people here. He didn't say that I would know almost all of them, so it's good to see so many familiar faces. I'd like to thank Barry and the Chamber for hosting this conference. Energy has always been an important issue to Barry and the Chamber. It's an issue they highlighted in their Blueprint Virginia strategy, and we appreciate the focus on that. Thank you, Barry. I'd also like to congratulate Jim Campbell on his award. Jim was really the model of an association executive, as Barry said. He represented the interest of his members, but he built bridges to other stakeholders, worked well with the business community, and Jim, congratulations. I know that relationship will continue with Dean Lynch, somebody I've known for a while, so we very much look forward to that as well. You all really provided a model of succession planning that many of us could learn from. I know Tom Kuhn was here earlier. I know that because I saw him over in our office, ostensibly to meet with Tom Farrell, but I actually think he needed to charge his Tesla before he drove back up to Washington. So I think he got that accomplished. I know he did a good job earlier. I expect that most of you here today know the world of energy is not what it was even a few short years ago. In fact, if you were a time traveler from 2009, as recently as 2009, you would be hard-pressed to recognize today's energy landscape. Natural gas is the new default fuel. Large-scale solar projects are now a key part of utility investments. Carbon constraints are now the fundamental environmental consideration for utilities. Many of you know that our company's reach extends well beyond the Commonwealth. We operate businesses and assets in many locations from Connecticut to California. But to those of you who call Virginia home, we remain the local power company, and that's the perspective I'm going to speak to you from today. As your local power company, our job is to keep the lights on, around the clock, in all kinds of weather, and do it safely, reliably, efficiently, and affordably. That's the heart and soul of our business, keeping the lights on, because if we fail at that, not much else in our economic system is going to work. That includes smartphones, computers, air conditioners, and every ATM in the state, among other things. Our energy networks typically perform very well. You could even argue that our country has created a $14 trillion economy based on the ability to reach out, hit the switch, and know that the lights are going to come on dependably and affordably all times, day and night. That's both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because our economy and our national security benefit from abundant, reliable, and affordable supplies of energy. But it's a curse because our energy systems work so well that we take them for granted, and sometimes assume new investments in infrastructure are not necessary because what we already have seems to work so well. It's our job at Dominion not to take reliability for granted. It's at the heart of every decision we make, and it's at the heart of our long-range planning. Current forecasts by PJM, the regional transmission organization that Virginia's investor-owned utilities belong to, show electric demand in Dominion's service area, which includes most of Virginia and northeastern North Carolina, growing more than anywhere else in a surrounding 13-state region over the coming decade. This projected demand growth amounts to adding the equivalent of 1 million new homes to our existing network. As we approach this challenge, I think it makes sense to assess where our strengths and weaknesses are as a state when it comes to energy policy. Let me begin with the strengths. We have low, stable prices for electricity, strong reliability, and a diverse mix of around-the-clock generation. The policy environment in the Commonwealth promotes long-term planning and enables needed new investments. These are substantial advantages, and we should not take them for granted because they're not a happy accident. They're the result of thoughtful, forward-looking public policy and good business decisions. Let's start with the bills our customers pay. The bill for a typical Dominion residential customer is below the national, East Coast, and DC metro averages. Residential bills have increased 3.5% since 2008. That's 3.5% in 8 years, or less than 0.5% a year, well below the rate of inflation. As for industrial rates, which are a key factor in our economic competitiveness, we have among the lowest industrial rates in the United States and among the lowest industrial rates of the best states for business, according to CNBC. More impressive to my mind, our industrial rates are lower today than they were 8 years ago. That's a record of rate stability I'm very proud of. It resulted from increasing our own generation with efficient new resources rather than relying on hour-by-hour market purchases. It resulted from a diverse mix of fuels, and it resulted from efficient operation of our company. In addition, the grid is more reliable than it's ever been. That's something I'm proud of, but I'm equally mindful that we need to continue to improve. Electricity is no longer a luxury or a convenience. It's essential to operating and powering medical equipment, carrying out the tasks of day-to-day life, from paying bills to doing homework. Planning is another strength in Virginia. Since 2008, we've been required to submit to the State Corporation Commission biennially a 15-year plan for meeting our customers' needs. In 2015, given the uncertainties around the Clean Power Plan, the General Assembly made this an annual requirement. This planning process has been beneficial for our customers, and it's provided both an informal and formal forum for stakeholders to weigh in on what our customer needs will be over the next 15 years and the best approach to meeting those needs. So planning is critically important. We not only build big things, but we have to build the right big things on time, on budget, and in compliance with all relevant environmental laws and regulations. And when we build them, we spend billions of dollars and expect the facilities to operate for 50 years or more. That's not your standard business model. We have to generate power on a vast scale, enough to cover all residential and commercial needs, moment by moment, for more than 2.5 million households and businesses in Virginia and North Carolina. Our 2016 plan was filed in the end of April. In it, we offered 5 different possible scenarios. One is what we call the least cost plan. It relies entirely on natural gas and assumes no carbon regulation of any kind, which is an outcome we think is unlikely. Natural gas has a lot going for it as a fuel source. It's abundant, low cost, and cleaner than the other 2 fossil fuels, oil and coal. It also operates on demand at all times of the day and night, in all kinds of weather, and can be quickly ratcheted up in response to variable energy production from sources like wind and solar. Despite the many advantages of gas, Dominion's never been comfortable putting all its eggs in one basket. We value what we call fuel diversity. That's because reliance on one and only one fuel source leaves us vulnerable. It lacks the diversity and balance that has long been the cornerstone of our generation mix. Most important, fuel diversity protects our customers from price swings and potential supply disruptions, which can lead to higher energy costs. We learned this lesson in late 1972 and 1973 when our first 2 nuclear units, Surry 1 and 2, began operating. At this time, utilities were being encouraged to convert coal units to low-cost oil generation, and a nuclear unit, much less twin units, seemed out of step with the current trend. In the fall of 1973, after the Yom Kippur War and subsequent oil embargo, oil prices tripled, what Daniel Yergin called the first oil shock. The decision to build 2 nuclear units suddenly seemed pretty smart indeed, and a preference for fuel diversity became encoded in our corporate DNA. The other 4 long-term options we evaluated all emphasize fuel diversity. They're designed specifically to meet the various compliance frameworks offered to the states by the Clean Power Plan. These 4 long-range resource plans have some other things in common besides compliance with the Clean Power Plan, most notably including higher costs to customers than the scenario which assumes no carbon limits. Over the 15-year planning period, which runs from 2017 to 2031, we estimate the additional cost of the carbon rule on our residential customers to be anywhere from $5 billion to $13 billion, depending on the compliance strategy adopted by the Commonwealth. That translates to customer bill increases ranging from about 6% to 26% in 2022, the year Virginia's interim carbon reductions kick in. I'm not going to spend time going over the specifics of each plan. That would take up the rest of the day and would cause you to either nod off or leave. At least that's what happened when I tried to explain the Clean Power Plan to my kids at dinner the other night. We don't want that to happen. But suffice it to say that planning is one of our strengths here in Virginia. In many ways, it's the key strength. But I do want to say something about our weaknesses. Many of them can be traced back to a single source, one that's not unique to our company but has been a challenge for our entire industry: our inability to communicate in simple terms about complex issues. This thread can be traced through the debates on solar power, onshore wind projects, and nuclear power, among others. Let me start with the growing role of solar power in our generating portfolio and our fuel diversity strategy. Some critics suggest that we've been too slow to incorporate renewable technologies like solar power into our fleet. I would argue that we've been prudent. As we're now in Triple Crown season, I'll use a racing analogy. Virginia is seldom the first horse out of the gate in any area of policymaking. But as any racing fan knows, the first horse out of the gate doesn't always win. Just ask the owners of Dancing Candy, the horse that took the early lead at Churchill Downs on Saturday and finished 15th. We're in solar energy for the long haul, and we have a strategy that makes sense for all of our customers. That strategy actually grew out of our experience operating in solar in other states, investments funded by our shareholders, not our customers. As of the end of last year, our company had solar facilities operating in 7 states, from California to Connecticut, with more in development. We've learned a great deal by building these large-scale solar projects, and we're excited about bringing this experience home to Virginia. Last fall, we announced the acquisition of a new 80-megawatt solar facility in Accomack County near Oak Hall on the Eastern Shore. This will be one of the largest solar facilities in the Mid-Atlantic region and should be producing power later this year. The project was made possible by an agreement with Amazon, and we look forward to expanding our relationship with them. Amazon wants to increase the amount of renewable energy on the grid to power its energy-intensive data centers. We certainly want to help them do that, and we need to find more creative ways to provide the solar energy that some of our largest customers want and need. Too often, the debates regarding solar power focus solely on capacity factor, cents per kilowatt hour, and net present value. These are critically important factors in solar energy development, to be sure, but they're not the only ones. For some of our largest customers and many of our residential and commercial customers, solar power has become a strong corporate or consumer preference. It's an energy resource, to be sure, but it's also a normative choice. There's more going on here than dollars and cents per kilowatt hour. The challenge is how to respond to this corporate and customer interest in solar in a way that makes sense for all of our customers. And I'm pleased with our initial efforts to accomplish both. For example, Dominion has joined forces with Microsoft in the Commonwealth of Virginia to develop the Remington Solar Facility in Fauquier County. With regulatory approval, we plan to install about 260,000 solar panels on 125 acres of land that Dominion already owns. Once completed in 2017, this 20-megawatt facility should produce enough power at peak capacity to supply all the electricity needs of 6 state agencies under the direction of the Secretary of Natural Resources, the equivalent of about 5,000 homes. This was a particularly innovative arrangement under which the state saves money over the life of the project, Microsoft helps fulfill its corporate sustainability goal, and we're able to bring a substantial new solar project to our state. So Hayes, well done. These are the types of customer-driven, innovative partnerships that will play an important role in moving solar energy forward here in the Commonwealth. Another 3 solar projects totaling 56 megawatts of capacity are pending state regulatory approval. Their output would serve all of our customers and would be located in Isle of Wight, Louisa, and Powhatan counties. In addition, we've contracted to purchase the energy from a solar installation to be built in Chesapeake and owned by Sun Energy One. Now, for all you NASCAR fans, it might be worth noting that Denny Hamlin, Virginia's own Denny Hamlin, is a part owner of Sun Energy One. And that fact alone may say more about the complexities of modern energy policy than anything else. A man whose job is to drive a car that gets less than 5 miles per gallon is the part owner of a solar company. In total, our plans call for investing about $700 million to develop multiple large-scale solar projects in Virginia, totaling 400 megawatts, enough to power about 100,000 homes. And that will no way be the end of our effort on solar. As Churchill once said in a different context, it will be the end of the beginning. We face the same criticisms on wind as we do on solar, too slow and not enough. But again, certain realities intrude. We've encountered substantial resistance citing onshore wind, most notably in Tazewell County, where the county board effectively banned wind turbines. This was unfortunate, given that the site we were working on in Tazewell had among the best wind resources in the state. That's not to say we have no experience with onshore wind. Dominion currently owns half of 2 large wind farms. One is located in West Virginia. Its power gets sold into the wholesale market, but an estimated 66,000 households in Northern Virginia, the nearest population center, consume most of it. The other wind facility is in northwest Indiana near Purdue University. It spans 50,000 acres, a larger land area than the District of Columbia. We've learned a lot from operating these facilities, and with each new technological breakthrough, wind power shows more promise, particularly offshore. Dominion is studying the potential of wind-generated power in the waters off coastal Virginia. Almost 2 years ago, we won the bid to lease more than 112,000 acres of federal property in the Atlantic off the coast of Virginia Beach under the first ever federal research grant for offshore wind energy. This project is a long-term undertaking. By that, I mean a decade or longer. And here, too, there are still lots of questions to answer. Long story short, we have to find ways to get the costs down before we can proceed with the commercial development of offshore wind. But if it can be done safely and affordably for our customers, the product could generate a lot of electricity when the wind is blowing and the turbines are spinning. Our proposed 12-megawatt pilot program could be an important step forward in charting a path for offshore wind. In fact, our project was the very first in the country to receive approval by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. Unlike the criticisms we faced on renewables, too slow and not enough, the opposite can be said of nuclear, too fast and too much. One of our long-range plans has a nuclear component. It involves the construction and operation of a new nuclear unit at the North Anna Power Station in Louisa County. But there are challenges in this arena as well. The Clean Power Plan is tough on states with existing nuclear power like Virginia. In Dominion's case, approximately 40% of our output in recent years has come from emissions-free nuclear. And when I say emissions-free, I also mean carbon-free. In our view, one of the main flaws of the Clean Power Plan is its failure to recognize the important contribution the nation's existing nuclear fleet is making to reducing emissions. No credit is given to our nuclear stations for their zero carbon emissions. None. That makes no sense. Nuclear power is the only large-scale, zero-carbon, round-the-clock source of electricity. The only one. Our country will not succeed in achieving its carbon reduction goals if we continue to ignore the role that nuclear units play in our economy. As I mentioned earlier, there's a common thread to all of these challenges: the gap between the way we execute on our plans and the way we talk about them. Dominion must continue to deliver safe, reliable, affordable, sustainable energy every time our customers flip a switch, whether at a home, a retail shop, a data center, or an industrial facility. That means we have to keep building new infrastructure, power stations, electric transmission lines, natural gas processing storage facilities, and pipelines, especially the much-needed $5.5 billion Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which will bring natural gas into Virginia and North Carolina for use by gas and electric utilities, including Dominion and Virginia Natural Gas. In both the winter of 2014 and the winter of 2015, we saw price spikes on the coldest days well beyond increases in commodity prices due to insufficient gas pipeline infrastructure in Virginia. The need for additional natural gas is not limited to just a few really cold days. As we become more reliant on large-scale, around-the-clock natural gas generation, this is a critical area to address for both cost and reliability reasons. Our infrastructure investments are also paying substantial dividends for the state's economy. Richmond-based Chimera Economics and Associates released its study of the economic impact of our new investments last October. It looks at Dominion's capital spending projects in Virginia over a 6-year period from 2015 through 2020. Over that time, Chimera's analysis found Dominion's construction projects will produce about $10 billion in new economic activity in the Commonwealth. We have a good plan, and we have a proven record of executing on this plan to bring projects in on time and on budget. That's a huge strength. However, I'm also mindful we have a complex story to tell in the age of Twitter. We've not been as nimble and as clear in telling the story of why new investments are needed and the reliability, cost, and environmental benefits that those investments will bring. We have controversies about new investments in natural gas pipelines, electric transmission, but also wind power and solar energy. And in many cases, we haven't told our story very well. Our recent experience with closing our coal ash ponds is a good example of this shortcoming. We have a great plan for improving the environment, protecting public health in our waterways, and using consumer dollars wisely. Perhaps we mistakenly assumed this plan would speak for itself and that everyone would recognize the benefits it would provide. We were wrong, and we had to redouble our efforts to explain what we were doing, why we were doing it, and the benefits that our plan would provide. Energy policy, as everyone knows in this room, is complex. Few decisions are incontrovertible. There are pluses and minuses to every new investment. We work hard to make the business decisions, subject to the approval of our regulators, that best meet our core responsibility of delivering clean, reliable, and affordable electricity. We're working as hard as we can to be transparent and as clear as possible with our stakeholders on why we made each decision, what we'll do to implement the plan, and how we'll monitor our progress. I hope my remarks today have offered some of that transparency, and I look forward to working with the Virginia Chamber and many of you in this room as we continue to negotiate the changing energy landscape. Thanks very much.